Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is the second episode of a series that I'm doing. This is called the Fiction Behind My Gaming, my Appendix N, and I am still continuing with my Robert E. Howard collection. So the first video in this series I did the paperbacks that I have in my collection, and now I'm going to start taking a look at some of the trade paperbacks. So, if you're not aware, the difference between a paperback and a trade paperback is trade paperbacks tend to be much larger, and just in dimensions, and that's really what makes the big difference. Other times, they're anthologies of different short stories as well. And so I'm going to go through my collection here. I'm going to switch views. I can't use my desktop, looking down because, I have so many of these and it's just harder to go through it. So I'm just going to read off and talk a little bit about each of them as I go through. So I will switch to full screen here. Now, this is a shout out to DM James and Crafty Matt, both of whom are very involved with Modiphius's Conan 2D20 game system, and they they do a lot of videos talking about it. And this is something that I want to point out. I'm sure that they probably have these books already, but if you are looking to find the truest representation of Robert E. Howard's Conan stories, then the Del Rey series and the trade paperback are the ones that you want to get your hands on. I have older editions of hardback, first editions like Gnome Press, which came out in the 1950s, and those stories were watered down. They were altered from their original. These, of course, put out the Conan stories in the way that Robert E. Howard had written them, including the language and the context and just the tone and storytelling of his day, which would be the late 1920s, early 1930s. So for those that look at these and they want to get the truest sense of Robert E. Howard's writing, then this is where you're going to go. So this is the Coming of Conan the Sumerian, and this has several stories, and I believe even a novelette inside. So, and when I say several stories, there's a lot. There's quite a bit in here. These are volumes, 450 pages. Excuse me. And they all start with with the Hyborian age and the telling of the story. The setting is a time period. The setting is not like a different world setting. So it is the world, our real world, but in a time frame that is fictionalized. From the fall of Atlantis to the rise, of the to the rise of the known civilizations, and that's the time period that Robert E. Howard is talking about. So, the Coming of Conan the Sumerian is the first of the series. There are 3 books in the series. Then we have the and I think I just put it out of order here. We have the Bloody Crown of Conan. All right, and this obviously continues along with same format. And then finally, the Conquering Sword of Conan. And all of these are just huge. They have these were put out by Del Rey Books back in 2005. And let's see if this is the, yeah, I know I got them in reverse order. So of these two. So it goes the Conquering Sword and then the Bloody Crown. So there we have Conan. I also have, and I strongly recommend that if you're a Robert E. Howard fan, that you should get Solomon Kane. Now there are RPGs based on Solomon Kane stories as well. You have one from Savage Worlds. Has a Solomon Kane 3-book series, at least 3-book series, which I do have, and required reading for Solomon Kane. We have Swordwoman and Other Historical Adventures. So Robert E. Howard did a number of short stories set in the real world using, so these are historical fictions, and we have many things such as Egyptian adventures, adventures in Afghanistan, and northern portions of Africa. We have adventures of various different characters that are in France during the Roman Empire and such. So, and the main protagonist here would be Dark Agnes, and so Robert E. Howard did write very strong leading ladies in some of his short stories, whether it be Dark Agnes. Red Sonja was kind of a compilation of different characters, and not really his own, but you had Valeria as well, and Belit and Dark Agnes are his main ones. So we then go to the precursor character. Cull was actually came before Conan, and so one of the by this Exile rule is a Cull story that was later on adapted to being a Conan story as well. But King Cull, Exile of Atlantis, is another must-have for your collection. Cull is a little bit different than Conan. Oftentimes, people might think that they're essentially the same character, and it's just not correct. They're two totally different characters. Even though they're both barbarians at their nature, I think Cull adapted to the life of being a king much more so than Conan ever did. All right, we have Bran Mcmourin. All right, so, and again, so he is a Pictish character, and once again, very, very powerful character, carrying the theme that Robert E. Howard tended to push, was the theme of civilization being the real negative in the world. It bringing something that the previous tribal, savage or barbaric world was a more honest way of living, and it was just when he kind of delves into that concept of civilization being the true negative, it's a glorification of the ancient world, and it's a glorification not of ancient civilizations but of the ancient world. All right, so the more traditional tribal and and again a barbaric world that Robert E. Howard kind of loved writing about and glorified and glamorized in his writings as well. And then finally, and this is actually my personal second favorite Robert E. Howard character, is Elbarak. And these are more modern adventures, and these are these are taking place in Afghanistan in the 1920s or so. So so pretty interesting stuff. Really really gives you a nice expansion into out into the East and going to areas that have not really been covered yet. So you can use El Barak with the other, like a character like El Barak, and just with some modification, you can use Modiphius's Conan 2D20 system for that. But you could also use Lion and Dragon's newest installment of Swords and Caravan, Sword and Caravan from RPG Pundit, that I'm going to certainly look to see if this can be adapted to that, because that is really covering the Silk Road and the Far East and the Southeast, including Afghanistan and such, in that RPG as well. So certainly looking to do something along those lines. So those are the main ones. Those are all Del Rey books. They're all original writings of Robert E. Howard, so they have not been altered. No sensitivity reading in any of those there. It's all just the way that he had written them, and that's the way that they're presented there. Awesome lead-ins for each book as well. So there's a section in every book that kind of explains how the book was put together and what order you find these stories in and why they're in that particular order. Or many of Robert E. Howard's stories aren't written in chronological order. They're stories told as if by, at the campfire. And so when you're reading through his Conan books, they tend to jump around throughout different phases of Conan's life, and that's because they're presented in that fireside type storytelling. I have some others now. Many of these are going to be duplicates of what you find in other books. So I have Robert E. Howard's People of the Dark. All right, now this is kind of close to a paperback. It's just slightly larger than that, but there is some duplication here of stories. So I have Kings of the Night, Song of the Mad Mistral, Children of the Night, The Footfalls Within, The Gods of Balsagoth, The Black Stone, The Dark Man, The Thing on the Roof, The Last Day, Horror from the Mound, and People of the Dark. So there are different characters in these books here, but all of the short stories have like a theme that runs through them. So once again, People of the Dark. We have The Moon of Skulls, and this here is a compilation of different characters once again. Mostly Solomon Kane, but there will be some others mixed in as well. So El Barak including. So these are going to run a little bit more on the horror side than some of the other short stories. Wings in the Night is the next one, and these tend to go in volumes. I actually have these volumes out of order. So here we have Wings of the Night, Arkham, An Open Window, Worms of the Earth, The Phoenix on the Sword, Scarlet Citadel, The Cairn on the Headland, The Tower of the Elephant, Autumn, and Moonlight on the Skull. So these, again, are a mix of different characters. Some of those are Solomon Kane, some of those stories are Conan, and others might be Bran Mcmourin, which Worms of the Earth is. We have the Shadow Kingdoms. So this is volume 1. I actually should have done these in their order. So we have Shadow Kingdoms. And again, a mix of different stories. This has a ton of short stories here. As you can see, there's quite a bit. This is still 246 some odd pages, probably a little bit longer than that. Oh no, that's what they put the end of each story. So 246 pages there. I have Lord Samarkand, and this is this is some of his historical fiction work here. So we're going to be dealing with like Red Blades of Black Cathay. We have the Hawks over Outremer. So we have some of his Roman Legionnaire stories that are thrown in here as well, and just a huge mix. Now, many of these stories I've read decades ago. Others I've listened to. When I was working, I commuted up to 3 hours a day. So I was oftentimes listening to these things on audio. And so that's been my last few years of experience with Robert E. Howard's books, is listening to them on audio. And many of these, if not all of them, you can get on audio as well. And continuing on, we have, I know somebody had mentioned this in the last video, but I do have his boxing stories. And so, Robert E. Howard wrote many. He was a boxer himself, although not professionally, but he was a really, really big guy. And so we have these boxing stories, which I'm sure he can talk from personal experience as well. And these obviously are set in the in the real world in the 1920s, and early 30s, and that's where these stories just came out of his imagination, based on some of his own experiences and such. And so we have some more modern, less sci-fi or fantasy. And then the Black Stranger and Other American Tales. All right, so these are books that are set, once again, historical fictions set in in the United States. So these are going to be a mixture of stories that are set in the United States, and then a few other stories, all right, that are connected to the Black Stranger or along that kind of a theme. So again, all of these books here are a good source for stories that you can then take to various RPGs that you might have. And some work better than others, but like I said, you have Modiphius's 2D20 system, which will work purposefully really well with any Conan story. You have the Solomon Kane that will work with Savage Worlds and that game system as well. And then you have others that you can mix around and go to various different game systems in order to find that connection. You could also just use these for story ideas, and take them into any kind of a genre where they would actually fit in. So, but most are Most are not science fiction. You have a mixture of low fantasy and horror, and that's most of Robert E. Howard's forte. That's what he wrote, and those are the some of the source materials that I have. So I am going to continue this series with with his hardcovers, and then I have a few pamphlets. But I'm going to take a break from this series for about a week or so, and I'm going to get caught back up again with some videos on some new RPG materials that I have. I have a Fallout RPG from Modiphius. I have the free starter set or quick start rules that I want to do a video on. I have a number of PDFs to go over from my friends over at the Red Room, and I want to go. That's Miguel and Sylvia, and so I want to go over some of those as well, and because they've been bombarding me with a lot of PDFs, so I really do have to get caught up and start showing off some of the really great work that they're doing as well. And as always, I try to keep up on everyone else's content and taking a look at what's out there and what sparks my interest as well. That's why I know DM James was recently doing a whole series on the Conan 2D20, and I believe he had Crafty Matt on his channel talking about 2D20 as well. So and I have to catch the rest of that video. I only just started watching some of it, so definitely going to take a look at that. And again, if anyone wants to jump in the comments section and leave a comment, you're welcome to do so. If there's anything that you want me to take a look at, please feel free to put that in the comments section. If you like the video, please give it a like. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing, and that way you'll get alerts when I'm putting out some new content. Also, again, as always, suggestions are very welcome, and you leave them out there, and it usually takes me a couple of days just to get around to them. But hopefully, now that it's the summertime and I'm retired, I will have more time to put out more videos on a weekly basis, and I'll get to your requests that much faster. So once again, enjoy the rest of your week. I look forward to seeing you over the weekend. I will have another video coming up a little bit later on this afternoon, probably talking about Fallout and that quick start rules that I received. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for stopping by, and you'll have a great upcoming weekend. Take care.